Well, welcome again to another session of the 18th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment Virtual Conference. Yes, I'm still Bob Hales. I'm still your moderator. Uh, Keep in mind, we're sponsored this year by the Journal of Educators Online. They have some really excellent peer-reviewed articles that I think anyone who attends this conference would find interesting and useful. So if you have a chance to check it out, it would be great. THEJEO.com. Take you right to it. So we have with us today Thomas Dyer, who has presented for us on multiple occasions. He's professor in the Department of Online Teaching and Learning at Grand Canyon University. He's got over 17 years of experience in higher education and online teaching and learning. In fact, his dissertation was titled Online Full-Time Faculty Descriptions of Social Presence, a Development of Social Presence Literacy. And he has uh, really given us lots of great information over the years. So he's going to do it again with Pace Yourself, Human-Centered Pedagogy for the AI Era. So Thomas, it's
Hmm.
all yours.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. I'm excited to be back. I love this conference, one of my favorite, and you couldn't have a better person to lead it than Bob. So I really appreciate it. But just want to say good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. And I just want to start with a confession. So I'm not here to argue against AI, not at all. I'm not here to tell you to resist it or to fear it or to ban it. I'm here to ask a different question. Okay, so what happens when teaching efficiency increases faster than presence? So, because we're living in this moment, right, where our tools are evolving faster than our pedagogy, the risk isn't the technology. I believe the risk is what quietly disappears while we celebrate that innovation. So, that's really what today is about. How do we design human-centered classrooms in an AI era? Because that gap between speed and connection, it's really where a lot of that tension lives. So I want to start with a real question. So don't overthink it, just answer it instinctively right into the chat. What is one thing students still need from a human teacher that AI cannot provide? So just go ahead and drop your response in the chat. What is that one thing students need from a human teacher that AI cannot provide? I'll give you a minute there. I see empathy. Thank you. Jennifer, you're looking ahead already. Awesome. Human contact. Thank you, Tanya. Amanda, empathy squared. Absolutely. See if anybody else jumps in. The human factor. You're in the right spot. All right. Good deal. Awesome. Thank you. So, just a little bit of context about me. My work sits at the intersection of social presence, pedagogy, and emerging technology. Um, my my doctorate degree is a PhD in psychology with an emphasis in technology and learning. So technology is important to me, but it's really that intersection of social presence, and that's where my research really lies. So I really care about this topic. It's not just abstract to me; it comes from watching classrooms in real time. So this slide shows the tension we're all living inside right now, right? On one side, we have acceleration, we have efficiency, we have automation, scalability, standardization, and optimization. This is the AI trajectory. On the other side, we have our human needs. We have connection, belonging, trust, presence, meaning, and identity. So our tools are evolving rapidly, but our students' human needs, our human needs haven't changed in a century. They still learn through relationships. My friend and colleague Gene Mandernack, who is the editor of the JEO that's the sponsor of this conference. But my friend and colleague Gene Mandernack shared something so simple but yet so impactful with me last year, and it's something I think about almost every day. that good teaching is still inherently social. So just let that tension sit with you as we move forward. So I don't believe the issue is AI, but I believe we are fighting the erosion of presence. I mean, that's really a very different conversation. So the first time I had realized AI had entered my classroom in a serious way, it wasn't really dramatic. There was no cheating scandal, no crisis. I had a student turn in an assignment that was technically perfect, grammatically flawless, structured beautifully. But when I read it, something felt off, right? Like you've all experienced this. It didn't sound like a student wrestling with ideas. It sounded like an answer that skipped a struggle. And what really surprised me even more than that is I wasn't just seeing this pattern most clearly with my students, I was seeing it with my peers. I had colleagues who in the past had produced very little for years. Suddenly they're publishing and emailing, presenting at a high rate. But when asked to explain their own work, they couldn't interpret what they had shared. The emails I received felt colder. Conversations felt scripted. Everyone sounded the same. And that moment, it didn't scare me. It just really unsettled me in a quieter way because I realized the problem wasn't that AI existed. The problem was that learning and even professional identity had been optimized to the point that I felt like the human process was disappearing. And that's when I started thinking less about policing this technology and more about protecting our presence. So before we explore the heart of today's conversation, I want to pause and share this quote with you. But believe me, it's not anti-innovation. It's just a warning about imbalance. So the quote is, there's a cost to overemphasizing and overvaluing all things new. When we're in constant pursuit of acquiring more, the latest and the greatest, we usually diminish or dilute the power of what we already have. So this is a quote by Patrick Lencioni, who's a renowned business author, health expert. He's really known for his book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. But this quote felt really relevant to me in today's educational landscape because we have this rapid rise of AI tools. We're moving on from Gen AI to agentic AI, and who knows what's going to happen as we move forward. But human-centered teaching, what we already know builds strong learning communities, remains essential. We have to protect it. So yes, AI is a powerful tool, but it should not replace the core strengths of what we bring to our classrooms. That presence, empathy, connection, and responsiveness. Those are the elements that make learning meaningful and memorable. So when novelty becomes the goal, meaning really gets crowded out. So let's take a look at the six traps that we may fall into. The first one is the new trap. The novelty doesn't always equal substance, right? Just because something is new doesn't mean it's valuable. And often the new can distract us from the meaningful. Diminished appreciation, this constant pursuit for, you know, diminishing and appreciating what's already in front of us. So the wisdom is already in our traditions. We just have to realize that recognizing that the rhythms already bring life. And then the illusion of fulfillment, this newness that offers sometimes it feels like it's like spiritual fast food, satisfying for a second, but empty in the long run. And in that illusion, we sometimes forget what it means to be present with what matters most. And then for the cycle of desire, of course, the cycle continues. We always want more, always more to download, more to consume, more to master. It just becomes more noise. And then the focus on the present. Presence invites us to move differently. It whispers to us to slow down, to notice what's already good, and to tend to what's already growing. And then six, finding contentment. Um, and that's really the heart of this presentation is contentment, deep spiritual posture of enoughness. So I can tell you a story about 10 years ago. I decided that I was going to be the most technologically advanced instructor in my department. I added discussion tools. I added a digital badging program, engagement apps, analytics, dashboards, collaboration boards, multimedia, you name it, I added it. And my class looked like a startup pitch deck. My students were overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed. And, now I'm noticing that my students and colleagues are doing something similarly professionally with AI. I'm watching colleagues automate their voice. Emails are becoming polished but hollow. Feedback's becoming efficient but indistinguishable. It wasn't that the work was wrong. What I was trying to do wasn't necessarily wrong, or what our colleagues are doing is not wrong, or what you're doing is not wrong. It just stopped sounding like anyone in particular. Every new tool added friction. Every login was a tiny tax on my attention. Every automation shifted focus away from relationships and on output. And we've accidentally designed a course or a workflow or a life that's impressive, but honestly exhausting. So I want you to reflect on this for a moment. You can jot it down in the chat. When has technology improved learning, and when has it reduced human connection? So please share your response in the chat. I'm sure most of us has experienced both sides of this tension. When has the technology improved learning? Just a few words. And when has it reduced human connection? So Jennifer shares it improves learning when students do deeper thinking. Okay, I like it. If you could share an example, that would be awesome as well. Anyone else? When is when has technology reduced human connection, maybe? Very big questions, hard answer on the fly for sure. Yeah. And maybe it's something you just keep with you, jot that question down on your in your notebook in the margin or on a note card and come back to it later. Like having students analyze AI output. Yeah. So some cognitive flex there for sure. When it's poorly used or inappropriately used. And we see that a lot these days. Awesome. Improve reaching our learners, assisting them to understand concepts and theories. Yep. Human connection. Thinking on this one. Got it. Love it. Zoom is a big deal, is enabled remote connection, which has the potential to improve learning. Absolutely. Distance learning for sure. Ironically, it seems like that tech like Zoom has done both. We're currently learning, but it might feel like we're connected to each other. Yeah, definitely. We feel a much greater sense of connection when we use things like Zoom and Teams and better connection with our colleagues and our students, especially those who maybe are online, remote. So for sure. Thank you so much for participating. Appreciate it. So we'll start getting into a little bit of the meat of the topic today. So social presence really is simple. I'm sure many of you have heard the term social presence. We'll talk about the three presences here shortly, but social presence is my expertise and is where I live. But social presence is really simple. It's just that feeling of being real with other people in a learning space. And without it, learning becomes very transactional. Students complete tasks, they don't build relationships. So even with the challenges of human-centered teaching, we keep coming back to it because we see what it does. Our students aren't empty containers, right? They're carrying full lives in their classrooms. Especially my students are all online. I teach full-time online. So, it's not the typical 18, 19, 20-year-old. My students have jobs, multiple jobs, families, responsibilities, experiences. And when we teach in ways that acknowledge those realities, learning becomes relevant and instead of just abstract. So that's what human teaching is. It's about connecting learning to real life. It says your experience matters here. And social presence is what lets us build that bridge. It lets us relate to students instead of teaching at them. Um, it also taps into motivation. So when students feel connected to their instructors, to their peers, they become accountable to a community, supported instead of isolated. How many times have we heard students feel isolated in online teaching and learning? I think students feel isolation even in a traditional classroom. And when they feel connected instead of isolated, that engagement follows naturally. And then connection reduces isolation, isolation kills motivation. So when students feel seen and supported, they show up differently. They may take risk. They'll stay engaged. They'll persist. And that's what we want. We want them to persist. So human-centered teaching isn't just that extra layer, it's that engine that keeps the learning moving. So a lot of the language we're using comes from the Community of Inquiry framework by Garrison, Anderson, and Archer, developed in 2000. It's one of the most widely used models for understanding online learning. And what it really says is that good learning environments rest on three presences: social presence, which equals connection, a connection to your peers, connection to your instructor. Cognitive presence is the thinking presence, and teaching presence is that guidance aspect. So, social presence is really the relational layer. Do students feel real to each other? Cognitive presence is the intellectual layer. Are they actually constructing meaning? And then the teaching presence is the structural layer, how we design and guide the experience. So when those three work together, learning stops being content delivery, it becomes a relational architecture. So I love Whiteside's social presence model, and she developed this in 2015. I had the great honor of having Dr. Whiteside as my content expert in my dissertation. So I was very blessed to learn directly from her. And so she gives this definition of social presence. It's the ability of participants in a community of inquiry to protect their personal characteristics into the community, thereby presenting themselves to the other participants as real people. But what Whitesides does that's unique is breaking down social presence into these five distinctive overlapping elements. It just gives educators like a map for building deeper online connections. So I want to start off with um, the affective association. So this is like emotional expression, humor, empathy, encouragement. I see you, I feel with you. Think things like um, gifts, emojis, maybe like a prayer request or just a student reaching out in need, kind words, vulnerability. That's affective association. Then we go to group cohesion. So this is like group identity, inclusive language, we more than I. And so this is like we belong here together. Think things like inside jokes, the group norms, the shared goals. And then we have instructor involvement. And so this is the visible personal presence of the instructor. So I'm not just the guide on the side or the sage on the stage. I'm here with you. So think like those personalized announcements, the video check-ins, genuine replies. Then we go over to interaction intensity. So how frequent and substantive and meaningful the exchanges are. So like think like we're not just talking here, we're like really engaging. We're going into deep threads in the discussion forum. We're having active dialogue. There's timely feedback. And then the final area is that knowledge and experience, how well the instructor and learners bring in relevant insights. So co-creating knowledge, think like drawing from lived experiences, applying learning to real life. So this model just is like reminds us that social presence is just an ecosystem. It's one that grows when we tend to it with intention. So there are many real challenges though here. I don't want to, go over this lightly. Um, and they're really specific to the moment we're living in. One of the challenges for faculty is over reliance on automation. So when we lean too heavily on these AI tools, when our students lean too heavily on AI tools, learning can start to feel like a black box, right? Data drives decisions, but we lose sight of the process. And when that happens, we don't lose information, we lose control of the learning experience. And the second challenge is depersonalization. If feedback, grading, and content delivery become automated without human layer, the classroom can start to feel mechanical. I mean, look, students feel it. I feel it. I bet you feel it. We know when a course stops feeling alive. And the third challenge is that loss of pedagogical control. So students should enhance teaching, or our technology should enhance teaching, not dictate it. The moment we start designing around tool limitations instead of student needs, the balance is already flipped, right? Social presence is about bringing our real selves into these virtual spaces. So we should not see these as complaints. They're just indicators of a profession. This is my opinion, a profession under pressure. We're trying to protect identity here while tools are reshaping workflow. So I want to slow down just a bit and talk about why this really matters and why it should matter to all of us. Students don't disengage because content is hard. Very rarely does that happen. They disengage when they feel invisible. Invisible. So we tend to talk about retention in terms of curriculum or workload or skill gaps, but belonging predicts persistence, connection predicts motivation, and I believe presence predicts engagement. But belonging is often the hidden variable here. So I want to talk a little bit about some research from Dr. Eric Carter and the Wheaton Center for Faith and Disability that helps us put some language to what belonging actually looks like. So they studied what helps people, especially individuals impacted by disability, feel like they truly belong in a community. And what they found really directly applies to classrooms. So I want to say something important here, though. While this research centers disability, it's not limited to disability. This is really just a framework for belonging, period. And there are so many things that our students carry, these hidden obstacles that we may never see, things like anxiety, trauma, learning differences, chronic illness. They might have caregiving responsibilities, financial pressures. So, beyond disability, every student walks into our classroom with an invisible context and invisible need. So when we're talking about inclusion, it's about identifying who qualifies. It's about it's not about identifying who qualifies. It's about designing spaces where belonging is assumed and not earned. So when we build classrooms that work for the margins, they work better for everyone. Um, so it's not just an accommodation model. I just want to make sure everybody knows that this is a human model. So Carter describes 10 dimensions of belonging. And when you hear them, you realize they're like relational signals. Are students present, not just enrolled, actually seen in the space? Are they invited, personally welcomed into participation? Are they welcomed when they arrive? Do they feel warmth in your classroom? Are they known by name, by story, by strengths, not by labels? Are they accepted without caveat? Do your students feel supported, given what they need to participate meaningfully? Are they heard? Do their voices matter? Do your students feel befriended, connected relationally, not just academically? Are they needed? Are they missed when absent? And are they loved? So Carter's work shows us that belonging grows in stages. It begins with choosing intentional invitation, then investing time and energy into knowing one another. Then you go into yielding, adjusting to meet real needs, then committing, building trust and relationships, and finally flourishing where every person's gifts needed or needs are valued. So that's the trajectory of relationship. And when those dimensions are present, belonging stops being this theoretical thing. It becomes natural. So students don't persist because we push them. They persist because they feel anchored to something relational, something bigger than themselves. Human-centered teaching isn't a soft skill. It's just not this soft add-on. It's the infrastructure. It's what keeps students in the virtual classroom long enough for learning to happen. It's why social presence isn't optional anymore in an AI era. It's protective. All right. So we don't need less technology. We need intentional pacing. So now we get to look at the PACE framework. So this framework isn't about resisting AI. I'm going to say that a few times as we go through. PACE is simply a reminder that technology should accelerate learning, but humans should set the rhythm. So the P stands for personalization. We're going to design learning so students feel seen, not processed. A stands for authenticity, showing up as a real instructor, not a polished interface. The C stands for community. where we build spaces where students learn with each other, not just near each other. And then the E stands for empathy, structuring learning around real human lives, not ideal schedules. So together, these aren't extra features, they're just guardrails. So they keep technology aligned with purpose and teaching aligned with people. And we're going to just walk through them practically. So personalization is about being seen, not just customization. So, one time I redesigned a discussion prompt that had always been really rigid, same topic, same format, same structure. One course, I added just a simple option. You can demonstrate this concept in any format that shows you deep understanding. So I still expected more written responses because that's just usually easier. If students are trying to get a discussion prompt done, they can just type it out really quick and it's simple. So I wasn't expecting them to take the choice option because honestly, they don't get a lot of choice in class. So, and in any of their classes. But I was getting things like podcasts, visual art, a short video, a poem. I even got a spoken word piece. And then one student said to me afterward, "This is the first time school felt like it saw me." And that's like all I needed. That sentence has never left me. So personalization isn't just customization, it's recognition of identity. So let's talk a little bit about some strategies and what social presence is as a lifeline in virtual spaces, how it serves to connect in the distance. So one of the clearest ways we build that connection is through personalization and the first step in this framework. So if we think back to the community of inquiry model, personalization lives inside teaching presence. It's that part design, part facilitation, part intentional direction of learning. So online spaces they don't have physical proximity, right? Like I can't, if a student's off task, I can't walk over to them and get them back on task. So students can easily disappear quietly in an online class. So personalization becomes our way of saying, "Hey, I see you." So unlike our face-to-face classrooms, online learning can drift toward impersonality if we're not careful. So a personalized approach helps bridge that gap by recognizing students as individuals with different strengths, with different backgrounds, with different needs. So one practical way is to do this through adaptive assignments, like what I talked about. These allow our learners to respond to performance instead of forcing everyone down the same path. If a student struggles with a foundational concept, we can slow the pace. We can provide targeted practice moving forward. And this is actually a place where AI can become a partner. Platforms that track progress and adjust challenge levels can scaffold learning without stigma. So I was in a presentation before this where they had their chatbots and they even talked about having students like put an assignment in a chatbot and have it work with them based on their level of skill. So this is a place where you can work with AI to do this. So, the goal though is this responsiveness, not just automation. So feedback is where we also find personalization because it comes most visible. It's what students are really looking for from us. It's easy to fall into using like stock comments. We've all done it, right? Um, Sometimes teaching can feel like a zero-sum energy game. And so our feedback is one of the strongest ways that connection points that we have. Um, Specific human feedback tells our students that their work was actually read. You could do like video feedback is really good if you have the time and the ability. Audio feedback can add tone and warmth that text alone can't carry. Even if it's just a 30-second message, it can cut right through that isolation. So, it's less about the grading and more about the relationship and pointing them in the right direction. Another layer is offering flexible learning paths. So that choice that communicates trust, multiple formats for content, different ways to demonstrate understanding, self-paced options when you're able to. So when students have that agency in how they engage with the material, though their motivation most likely follows. And then finally, personalization can be informed by data, but it needs to be guided by judgment. So Learning analytics, they can help us spot patterns, right? Who's struggling, where the friction lives, what content isn't landing. So sometimes that means offering extra support. Sometimes it means adapting or removing something we love. Um, I'll admit this is something that I struggle with. I get attached to custom content. Like I said in the beginning, I created a lot of content throughout my time as an instructor, and there's a lot of things that just don't land with students, even though I love them and I've got to get rid of them. So we have to be careful of that. But personalization just isn't the extra work layered on top of teaching. It's what teaching can look like if we're made visible. And this is how social presence moves from theory into practice. All right, I'm going to stop talking for a few minutes, seconds. So I want you to take 10 seconds and think about one assignment you could redesign. So you don't have to put this in the chat. You're more than welcome to if you'd like, but this is something I just want you to think about and write the name of the assignment down in your notes, something you can go back to later. So just take 10 seconds and think about one assignment that you could redesign. My guess is that you already have one in mind. So I'll give you that 10 seconds. Again, if you want to share in the chat, you can, but you don't have to. All right, we're going to move on to authenticity. So students trust instructors who are real, uh, not perfect, not polished, real. They don't expect us to have every answer. They expect us to just show up as people. And so when students sense a real human on the other side of the screen, I guarantee you trust grows faster than any credential can build it. So authenticity isn't like oversharing, but it's letting students see the thinker behind the content. And once trust is there, learning really has somewhere to land. So when we talk about authenticity in teaching, I want to anchor it in something familiar. I'm going to go back to the community of inquiry framework developed by Garrison Anderson Arger, which tells us that meaningful learning environments are built on the three presences: social, cognitive, and teaching. And so when I think about teaching presence in the AI era, I don't think about authority or control. I think about authenticity, because authenticity is what makes teaching presence feel human instead of procedural. So one of the most powerful ways we build authenticity is in storytelling. I love to tell stories. Stories collapse distance. They take the abstract content, anchor it in lived experience. They remind us that knowledge is carried by people, not just platforms. So storytelling doesn't require the cinematic production, right? Some of the most effective moments happen in imperfect spaces. I always tell faculty, I always tell other instructors, my colleagues, to be a one take video recorder. So if you're recording videos in your class, I always hear it's like it takes too much time to record videos. I have to edit them. I have to do this. Stop. Don't do that. I always tell just be a one take video recorder. If you stumble, keep going. We don't get retakes in a physical classroom. Why do we think we need them online? So those small imperfections are not flaws. They're the signals of presence. Students want to see us stumble. It's okay. That helps us look more real. They're not looking, I guarantee you, our students aren't looking for polished performance. They're looking for something real, more than ever today. You know, early in my teaching career, I believed credibility meant always having the answer. I sometimes still think that way, but one day I had a student ask a question in the discussion forum. I genuinely did not know the answer, and instead of improvising and just Googling it, looking it up, I just said in the thread, I don't know, but let's figure it out together. And I asked more questions, and I brought other students into the thread, and the energy in the discussion changed instantly. Students leaned into it instead of checking out. They weren't disappointed that I didn't have the answer. They were invited into the process. So that moment really taught me something that I carry into every class now. Authenticity doesn't reduce authority, it just deepens trust. And I think about that moment often, when I compare it to the emails that I started receiving during the AI boom, perfectly formatted, technically flawless, professional, but completely empty of voice. They answered my question, but they didn't reveal the thinker. And this transparency and vulnerability are about letting students see the learning process. So, including uncertainty and growth and struggle. So, when we share our challenges, our missteps, our behind the scenes thinking, we're not weakening our role. We're modeling what learning actually looks like, something AI cannot do. So, another opportunity for you to participate in the chat. When has authenticity strengthened your teaching? And this one you can definitely share in the chat. I'd appreciate it. And I see Jennifer posted earlier from the previous one. This isn't a sign, but I want to try giving video feedback. I encourage you to try it, Jennifer, and maybe just pick a few students, the ones that really need it, and try it with them, see how much time it takes, see how they receive it. Maybe even ask them, did you like this over that? I'd love to hear your point of view. But as you're answering this question again, when has authenticity strengthened your teaching? So relating the subject to personal stories, inviting others to do so as well. Awesome. When I share personal stories of my struggles to learn content, I'm teaching them. Yep, absolutely. Awesome. All right. I wish I could sit here in the chat all day, but I think I'm already behind. But I'll read this one. Authenticity increases my working relationship with my students to motivate them to stay engaged into the learning process. The percentage of assignments submitted has increased 100%. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Margie. Very cool. Always share my own learning journey with students. Very cool. Thank you. They also like when I add humor. I agree. I always tell, so when I used to teach in the College of Ed, I would tell my pre-service teachers I would always tell them though, you have to be yourself. Teach to your unique personality. So if you're funny, be funny. If you're not funny, don't try to be funny. But I love that you incorporate humor. Awesome. All right. So next part is community. So we talk learning sticks in community, not in isolation. Like once I ran a discussion where I intentionally just stepped back. I mean, I am probably an over participant in the discussion forum because I loved it's my favorite part of this job is connecting with the students. But one time I ran a discussion, I was like, I'm just going to step back. You know what? I'm not going to jump in. I'm not going to correct anything. I'm just going to let the students, converse. And students were explaining concepts to each other in like language that I would never use, but they understood it perfectly. I mean, I was getting to sit back and watch learning happen without me being the center of it. And so instead of feeling replaced, I felt kind of relieved because the community didn't weaken without me. I often thought that I was the center of the community. If I wasn't there, they wouldn't be able to function without me. But I learned that that's not necessarily true. And then I could come back in and help amplify it as well. So that was a really interesting experience for me. And so community is really where social presence becomes visible. It's where learning stops being individual and starts being shared. We talk a lot about instructor interaction, and that definitely matters. But community isn't just about how students connect with us. It's about how they connect with each other. So if we go back to the community of inquiry model for a second, that's where the cognitive presence shows up. It's that extent to which students are constructing meaning together through sustained communication. Um, Sort of like Vygotsky's zonal proximal development and the inner speech, all those things. So that doesn't happen by accident. It happens when we design for it. So peer discussion is one of the simplest ways to do this, but it has to go beyond like I agree posts. We want to build prompts that push students to apply concepts. Um, Community also means we need to look outward as instructors. Um, we can add group activities, and I know that that can be tricky in an online classroom, depending on your LMS or your institutional structure. But creativity goes a long way here. You can do peer review assignments, shared documents, virtual whiteboards, short collaborative projects. You can create some Zoom breakout rooms, team spaces, whatever tools you have available. It doesn't really matter about the tech. It's just sharing intellectual space. Instructor accessibility plays a role in community too. So I hold video office hours as a trust building tool. So I provide them with a link to a bookings tool or a Calendly tool. Those are two options. I use bookings. Um, but I let them see my availability so they can see my schedule every day and they can just make appointments with me. And then I have like scheduled hours also where they can just show up and I'm just hanging out. There's like no agenda to those. Just come in, pop in, ask questions, or just like chill, whatever. Um, so when students see our availability and they can schedule time with us, um, they know that they're not navigating alone. And then finally, we shouldn't underestimate the power of social learning spaces. So not every LMS makes informal interaction easy, but even small adaptations can help. So like a forum where students can ask for advice or share stories, like for things they're experiencing, good or bad, celebrate wins. This is a great opportunity to keep the community real, engaging, and helping it to feel natural instead of forced. All right. I'm going to skip this because I am running short on time. But if you think about this as I'm talking, what's the best collaborative moment you've seen? You can write that down for your notes later and maybe build off of that. So we're going to go to the last part, which is empathy. Empathy is not lowering standards. It is humane rigor. I had a student email me once at like 2 in the morning, and it wasn't about grades. They were panicked. They were working full time. They were caring for a parent, and they were trying to keep up academically. And they weren't even asking me for an extension. They were apologizing because they felt like they were existing in the course imperfectly. And that email changed how I think about deadlines. Not because my standards or any standards disappeared, but because I started designing structure that assumes students are human before they are learners. And I contrast that with how quickly professional spaces are drifting towards automation, where those emails feel efficient, but empathy is optional. And I want to be careful that, recognizing how we're gaining speed at the cost of texture. So that we want to treat empathy as not like just leniency, but intelligent design. So empathy is where like our human-centered teaching becomes visible in our decisions. Um, this is where social presence moves from intention into action. So we look at flexibility. This doesn't mean chaos or lowered expectation. It's just like, what does flexibility look like for you? Being all open to alternative deadlines, um, creative paths to completion, things like that. Being an online student is hard. Every hour they spend in class is an hour they've taken from another role as being a spouse, a parent, an employee, a caregiver. So, flexibility should not be considered special treatment. It's really just structural empathy. And part of empathy is naming the struggles out loud. Online learning carries invisible stressors, time pressure, technology breakdowns, financial strain, family obligations. And so when we acknowledge those things, it helps to validate and build trust faster than any policy ever will. And supportive feedback is one of the biggest opportunities we have to practice empathy. Grading isn't just about evaluation, it's communication. So supportive feedback highlights growth, effort, direction, not just error. And then when we get into the final piece of proactive support, instead of waiting for students to disappear or fail quietly, empathy uh, lives in the place where we reach out to them early. So a simple check-in message, a reminder that they're noticed, and an invitation to reconnect. So I want to do this a little bit differently. I just want you to take about 30 seconds, um, and I don't want you to share this in the chat. I'm going to read this question again. What student challenge are we underestimating? So I'm going to bet as soon as I said that, a student or two popped into your head. So I just want you to jot their name down, not as a guilty thing, but just as a human thing. Think about what they're carrying that you might not fully see from the surface. the struggle behind the late work, the silence behind the discussion post, the I'm fine behind the quick email. And so I want you to think about what a student challenge that we may be underestimating. And here's the action step. Okay. So after this session, consider sending just a simple message, not a warning, just a human check in. Hey, you crossed my mind today. I just want to check in. How are you doing? Um, is there anything you need? How can I help you be successful this week? And I think you'll be surprised how often that message becomes the catalyst. So this helps us take empathy that it's just not this big intervention. It's just something as simple as noticing and then reaching out. Okay, so I want to pause really quick and just talk about some faculty concerns because these concerns are real. They're definitely rational. Um, so the first one I hear constantly is, I don't have time for this. And honestly, none of us do, right? But the reframe isn't to add more. I don't want you to add more. I just want you to make small moves because they scale. Just do a 1 minute check-in video, a redesigned prompt, a single empathetic message. Those are just small actions that, as they compound, they lead into presence. The second fear, AI replaces me. Deeply human fear. I have the same fear. Um, and what I try to tell myself is it's not about identity or that it is, it's about identity, not technology. So AI can't replace teaching, it just augments teaching. Um, and in doing that, it exposes something important that the parts of teaching that matter most were never automatable to begin with. And the third fear is that students prefer technology. Um, I just don't believe that. I think students prefer efficiency, but they don't want disconnection. What they actually want is both. They want smooth systems and human connection. And social presence can be the bridge between those two. So I want you to look at this line for a second. AI exposes what only humans can do. It doesn't replace, it doesn't diminish, it exposes. I've never had a student say to me, I remember that class because the grading algorithm was efficient. They remember instructors who noticed them, who said their name, who stayed on Zoom even when they had other things to do, who sent one more email that changed their trajectory. And they definitely won't remember a discussion where everyone sounded identical. Um, I had a student write something in the end of course survey that meant so much to me that I printed it and I framed it. And I'm going to read it to you. Professor Dyer is most definitely not mainstream. He challenged my thinking in creative ways that were extremely uncomfortable because it wasn't status quo. It pushed me beyond linear scholarly thinking for this course. I didn't like it one bit, but it was absolutely to my benefit. And it is the most meaningful feedback I've ever received. And that comment has nothing to do with efficiency. It's about impact. It's about a human relationship that I was able to build with them that disrupted their comfort and created growth. And that's really a powerful place to stand as educators. So I know we're at time, but I want you to just leave inspired. I actually I don't want you to leave inspired. I don't want you to leave inspired. I want you to leave decided because inspiration fades and our decisions, they stick. So I want to give you just a quiet moment here. Think back through everything we've done and just what is one move, not five, not a redesign, one move you're willing to try this week, whether it's personalization, authenticity, community, empathy. So just write that down on a sticky note on your phone, the margin of your notebook. Write that down. And as you're writing that down, I just want to share a space that you can learn and grow with me. So I run a social presence literacy lab, and you can use that QR code. You could use that link to get to the lab, but it's just a place that we talk about intentional presence. There's a discussion forum where we can connect with each other. I add different questions and prompts in there, and I keep updating resources. We have lots of videos, and currently for the spring, I'm working on a resource hub. And so hopefully by the end of the spring, I'll have that up, which is some really practical tools you can just drop in a classroom. But this is a place you can connect with me. And so please do that. And you can also email me or you can find me on LinkedIn. But I'd love to take some questions if you have any. And if you have a question, feel free to jump on the mic or you can jot it down in the chat. Yep. And I realize we're at time, so if you got to go, no problem. All right, Bob. I must have done a great job because nobody has any questions, or a poor job. I don't know which one.
Thank
I
you.
think
Thank you so much.
you
I
did a
just want to
great job.
say I really appreciate your effort, and I love, love, love what you share with us, because the bottom dollar is when we are working online. I work 100% online. It is very difficult to build those working relationships, but it is so important to ensure that we do the extra mile to build trust, to build a community of where everybody feels welcome and included. And so you've done a tremendous, tremendous job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Yeah, I really like. Hey, I'm retired, and I found it really interesting. Um, I in past life I uh, worked with a university that did a lot of video conferencing delivery of courses and with remote sites and so forth. And instructors who took the time to find out what was going on in the different cities where the sites were and
Hmm.
talk about that with the students in those cities, help build that connection with the
Yeah,
um,
for sure. Was
just
that in Pennsylvania, Bob?
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
I think that's when I first started presenting and attending was when it was still part of when you were doing this with the Pennsylvania higher education system.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. So yeah, I mean just something like that shows you care about the students in that location. It's just,
Yeah. It's
one
just small,
piece.
small move scale. Absolutely.
Uh,
Yep. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
and hey, I appreciate you taking the time for this. Uh, Really good. So it's a great way to end today and hopefully see folks tomorrow morning.
All right.